For $499 Sennheiser finally created the upgrade. We call this the Sennheiser HD490 Pro Plus. The Pro Plus version is different from the Pro version by one cable and one license for a software which can simulate some huge studios and the signature that they have in those studios, as well as some other Sennheiser headphone models. While I am not such a big fan of DSP or digital signal processing, the new HD490 Pro Plus is actually the headphone to replace all of the older Sennheisers. I'm quite excited about this, so let's see what the new HD490 brings to the table. Starting with the build quality, as we already talked about the price, which is $499 for the Pro Plus version, but you can grab the lesser Pro version for about $400. So I would suggest going for the cheaper version if you don't need both a secondary cable and the extra software license. Speaking of this cable, we have the connection on just one of the sides. It is a mini XLR cable, but it is on one side, which means no aftermarket cables. As far as I know, no other company makes one-sided mini XLR cables, and there is this issue. HD490 comes only with single-ended cables, which turns out to be a slightly larger issue than I thought, because most of my sources sound much better over the balanced connector. So just single-ended means that you will have half the power of your source for most sources. Sometimes it's even less than half the power. In that aspect, HD490 Pro Plus feels hard to drive. In fact, it feels as hard to drive as DCA or Dan Clark Audio Expanse, but it isn't as hard to drive. It's just pretty hard for the single-ended output of most sources. We have a mostly plastic build for the HD490. This is excellent. We also have the T+A Solitaire PSA, which is made of plastic, but for the HD490, the plastic build makes them very light, and being very light ends up being very comfortable. So the HD490 is quite comfortable. It allows for 180 degrees of rotation, if you can see. So you can theoretically put them on your head like this and do the DJing thing. Like, I am a much bigger fan of composing music than of DJing. But either way, Sennheiser HD490 is lightweight. You can swivel the cups. There is about 50 degrees of rotation in this axis, so they should fit most heads. And the best part is that finally Sennheiser made a comfortable headphone. I always had some nitpicking with the comfort of HD660S2, HD660, and most Sennheiser headphones were not that comfortable. First off, the ear cups of the 490 are smaller, but they are wider, so there is more space for the lateral plane of the ear. Most ears aren't that tall, but they are a bit wider, so this cup works well. Also, the cup is extremely deep. There is so much depth inside the cup, and the driver is also angled. So what this means is that the driver is kept at an angle towards your ear, so it is always parallel to the ear, because if it wasn't slightly angled, it would be parallel just to the ear cup, not to your ear. The default earpads are covered with a velour material. It's very, very comfortable. It's also filled with a thick and dense sponge, which does an excellent job at creating comfort. The headband has like those two teeth here, which are also covered in a velour material and offer a good damping for the headphone. It just sits so comfortably. There is almost no passive noise isolation. It's about 5 decibels. You can count it as 0. You will hear most of the stuff that's happening inside of your room. And the sound will leak at about the same volume as you're listening. The people in the room will know what you're listening to and at full volume. In this aspect, because Sennheiser wanted this to be a studio mixing, mastering headphone, I think it's not a great headphone to use while recording. If what you're listening to is audible and it's recorded by the microphone, that's not nice. At the same time, it's quite excellent for working on music, production, mixing, mastering, and the type of studio work where you are not also recording gets a thumbs up from me. As the cable connects on just one ear, it is quite comfortable to use from that aspect too. There is no cable handling noise that I could hear. The headphone doesn't really creak. It's very well put together. Sounds more like a high-end keyboard than anything. It's super good in the construction quality. It doesn't feel cheap, and it feels like the headband could take a beating. It's super well made. The headband is the only metallic part, and I think those grills are metallic, but I am not quite sure. The grills also have a convex shape to them. And although I don't think this does anything for the sound, it's nicer to touch and to look at. You can adjust the headphone quite a bit, so the minimum adjustment makes them super small. This is how they look like on my head, quite small, while at the maximum adjustment they are quite large. They should accommodate most heads. See, they are quite large at maximum, so most heads should be okay with the HD490 Pro Plus. Of course, the most important aspect about this is the sound. How does the HD490 Pro Plus sound like? In one word, it beats every other Sennheiser headphone. And this is the most important thing, because usually Sennheiser fans really loved the Sennheiser sound, which was a bit veiled, a bit warm, kinda laid back and relaxed for some models like HD600, and kinda forward and aggressive for other models like HD700, 660S, 660S2. Most of them were aggressive, but the HD600 and 650 was relaxed, laid back, and kinda veiled, to be honest. The new HD490 actually is more reminiscent of the HD380, which is a headphone which I used to own in 2012. I was just at the beginning of this crazy journey, and I purchased that with my lunch money saved over a couple of months, and I loved that headphone. It was amazing. It costed around $200 in Romania. I have no idea if it is still in production. I have not seen it in a long while. The whole idea of the HD490 is much more reminiscent of the HD380 than of the other models, yet this is the jewel of Sennheiser development. The first reason for this is the transparency. There is no veiling with the HD490. It's absolutely unveiled. It's more reminiscent of the Susvara unveiled than it is of any other headphone in the signature, in the actual tonality and the way it presents sound. We have a super wide and airy soundstage. We have a much deeper bass than most Sennheiser headphones, and this was a big complaint with some Sennheiser models. Also, we have a supernatural voice. And what I mean by this is that it follows the Harman curve quite to the textbook. It just went with the Harman curve, added a bit of extra bass because the bass is much better than other Sennheiser headphones, and made them sound really wide and holographic. To explore it a bit more in detail, we start with the bass. And in the bass, the HD490 has a much deeper bass. It goes lower in the sub bass. Also, it not only does it dig deeper, it sounds warmer and fuller than most other Sennheiser models in this price range. So we have impact, we have depth, but we also have actual rattle in the sub bass. Most other Sennheiser headphones do roll off at around 30 Hz or 40 Hz, depending on the song and on the source. But with the HD490, you don't really hear the roll off. You don't feel like it's ever rolling off. It sounds like it reaches 20 Hz, and that's a big plus. A huge thumbs up from me. The mid-range is the best part of this headphone. It's transparent, so not only do you not hear any coloration, it sounds natural, both male and female voices, but it renders guitars beautifully. You generally hear a much more emphasis being put on musicality and on a slightly softer sound with a slightly wet character. Then you hear harshness or grain. The HD660 was quite grainy. I did not like that. The HD660S2 was not so grainy, but it was quite aggressive and a bit fatiguing to listen. In the end, the S2 was not a favorite for a long time because it got quite fatiguing to listen to, especially with rock, metal, or with aggressive EDM music. It just wasn't doing it for me. The new HD490 is not fatiguing at all. I can listen to this all day, every day. It's wide, it's natural. And another interesting thing is that it handles both loud and quiet volumes. So most headphones are either quite bright and shouty and harsh and will render nicely at lower volumes because you get a lot of detail, but at higher volumes it will be unbearable, or they sound really nice at higher volumes where they come to life, are dynamic and engaging, and then they sound dull, bland and flat at lower volumes. This is the truth. This is how headphones sound like. But some unique models, it's a very rare occurrence, will have a perfect volume control. So the loudness saturation gradient will be so good that it will be consistent with the volume. And not only with the volume, the HD490 is consistent with sources too. The reason for this is that it has a somewhat high impedance of over 100 ohms, but also somewhat low SPL. So not only do you need clean voltage, it also eats a lot of power. So most amplifiers will play in their Goldilocks zone, basically where they do their best effort. It will sound quite good, dynamic and driven without sounding overdriven and distorted. It's a very nice combination of factors that makes most amplifiers and most DACs sound really good with the HD490. It has good volume control, so you can expect the same sound at all volumes. It's the same resolution, the same low total harmonic distortion, the same clarity and the same level of contrast between elements. The soundstage is the only part that gets slightly compressed at louder volumes, but I don't think it's the soundstage getting compressed, more the forward layer becomes so loud that it kind of drowns out the background layer. This being said, there is a really interesting effect. I don't know if it is a result of the curvature of the ear cup or something, but the background layer is convoluted around of your head, while most headphones leave the background layer alone, so it sounds distant but laterally distant. With the HD490, while the foreground layer is quite linear, like a straight line, and most instruments play where they're supposed to, the background layer gets rounded. Everything is just rounded around you, so you get a really unique presentation that fills in the void. There is no void in front of you, there is no void in the back of your head, everything just plays like a sphere around you. As it is a highly transparent headphone, you can expect to hear a difference between songs that sound tall and songs that are compressed on a vertical axis. It also renders the top end really well. So what I mean by this is high brilliance, high sparkle, a somewhat fatiguing treble. If the song is fatiguing, expect to hear a cymbal crash, but don't expect them to make every single song fatiguing. It's quite honest to the source. Most of those elements are elements that I really appreciate, not only in the studio, because in the studio most headphones will work just fine. Most headphones just need to not be V-shaped, because in a studio, if it's V-shaped, you'll never hear the details in the mid-range, and that's basically the only thing that you need in the studio. Just don't go for a V-shaped headphone to use in the studio. And the most frequently used headphone in the studio is the Audio-Technica ATH M50, which is super V-shaped, which is disappointing. With the HD490, I have a lot of fun just listening to them, using them just to enjoy music. It's a super nice audiophile headphone. It's engaging, it's vivid, it's brilliant, and the price-performance ratio is insane. I decided to replace every other Sennheiser headphone in my Hall of Fame with the HD490. It's better than the 660, than the 660 S2, it's better than all of them. It just outdoes every single other Sennheiser headphone, all while costing less. So, is there anything not to like about the new HD490? Just one thing. And I mean, I really struggled to find the disadvantages sonically or in the build quality. I threw them a few times around the room because I wanted to dislike it. I wanted to find something because I don't like giving a full thumbs up to a headphone. It's unfair a bit, especially because of the price point. I expected Sennheiser to cut corners at some point, and they did. They did in a spot which was important for us music lovers. That's the inclusion of a balanced cable. And at this point, with the mini XLR cable, which is just on one cup, you'll have a bit of a struggle to find a good balanced cable. But as there is no 4.4mm or XLR balanced cable, right now you are forced to use them with the single-ended output of most of your sources, which will considerably and significantly reduce the detail and resolution of the setup that you're listening them from. Happily, they are very consistent across setups, so even different DACs, different amps, they will most sound the same with the HD490. At the end of the day, to answer the question whether this is the perfect Sennheiser headphone, yes it is. It's the perfect one to get unless you want to go for the HD800 series. I am really hopeful that I will get to review the HD800 series because I have all of the other flagships. I mean, we got the Susvara here, so we have most flagships in the world. But Sennheiser HD800 is like the one headphone that got away. And I doubt that it will beat the Susvara, but I'm really curious how they compare and what I will think about the HD800 now that I have almost 900 written reviews of experience. And sadly, with all that experience, I can only tell you that the HD490 is the jewel of Sennheiser development and engineering. This is the final headphone that they made. And it's not just the most recent one, it's like the best one. At this point, I see no reason to recommend the HD600, HD650, 660 or 660S2 to anyone. None of those can beat the HD490. This is the headphone that literally blasts all of them away. The video just got really long, and if you're curious about comparisons with other headphones, I did write a few in the full written review. Please explore that on www.audiophileheaven.com, where I will be exploring comparisons with other headphones from other brands, because that's also important. The HD490 is a fully recommended model. It's a headphone I love using, and to be honest, it's really hard to beat even by other brands. But by Sennheiser themselves, is the best one. It's like literally they went ahead and wanted to create the best headphone. It's like they said, yeah, we must outdo ourselves. This is what they thought when they created the HD490. And if you want to outdo yourself in love, passion, and in good work, please do subscribe to this channel. Also like this video. And if you're feeling generous, we have a PayPal link where you could donate a few dimes to help us grow our channel. I know that this is going to be a fun headphone for anyone purchasing it. Unless you are really sensitive to brightness and to treble, you will like them. If you have HD600, upgrade. If you have a HD650, upgrade. If you have any other headphone, test it. You might be surprised that you end up liking them the most. I know that I like them the most out of their mid-range line of headphones. Thank you so much for watching. I really hope that this video was enjoyable to watch. I hope that you'll have a lovely week out there, and don't forget to enjoy the music. That's the most important part of this hobby. Thank you so much, and we'll see each other soon. Bye bye!